Hi everyone, Talia from Zart Art, and today we're going to be creating a monster mashup drawing. So this is an example of what we'll be creating. So the process here is to draw some abstract shapes. So these are just circular shapes intersecting, and from there we're going to pick out some of our monster shapes, or you could do this as cartoons or any other kind of creature, animal or object that you decide. But to begin, we're just going to use a piece of cartridge paper, and I have a grey lead pencil here, and all I'm going to do to start off with is drawing some of those lines intersecting across the whole page. Okay, so I've got a few lines merging in between each other, so there's no real right or wrong here. All you want to do is focus on filling up most of the page, trying not to go over the page, and just ensuring that you've got lines that are moving in between each other. So from here, all I'm going to do is look at some of these larger shapes and decide where a face could fit, and then add in some other features like arms, legs, tails, and then that will create the shapes of many different creatures intersecting with each other. So here I can see a bit of a long shape moving across the page. So I'm just going to start with a face down here, and you don't have to have any lines set in stone because you are working with a pencil. You can erase anything that you don't like the look of, or if you change your mind later. So I've got kind of a long shape here, so I might add some arms. So just cartoon style. I'm not going for anything too realistic or too complicated. Just want this to be a nice, simple drawing. As you're drawing, you might want some of your shapes to come off of the forms that you're working with, so you can just use your eraser to get rid of some of those lines that you don't need. If you have lines that are intersecting through your creature, such as this one going across, you don't need to erase those. They can become part of the drawing, and even when we're going to colour this later, it will kind of just be absorbed into the picture, and it's kind of nice to have that reference of where you started and where you saw all of your shapes. So as you're drawing, you might be able to see some of your lines might move into other lines. So when we're colouring in, that's when we can really decide which shapes we want to make most prominent. So here I've got 3 creatures that could intersect into those same shapes, but I do like this shape that's coming across. So what I'm going to do is extend those lines that I've added through these next few pieces, so that when I'm colouring in, I'll know that this is one form that moves along these several shapes. So now that I've just got in grey lead pencil all of my little monster faces that I'm going to include in the drawing, now the next step is to colour in these little creatures. So I'm going to be using watercolour pencils. Of course you can use markers, pastels, chalk pastels, anything you like. But the process here is to make sure you've defined where each part of the monster starts and where each one finishes. So just make sure you have a look over your shapes before you go colouring in everything, and just make sure you know where your monster starts and your monster finishes. So I'm going to be using a variety of different colours. And I'm going to start with my more complicated monsters, such as this one right in the middle, which is intersecting with quite a few different shapes. But when I was looking at this one, I wanted to include this part moving along to here. So all of this space is going to be the same colour to represent that one monster. Now, depending on whether you want to incorporate some tone into your drawing, you might want to think about where your light source is going to be. So my light source is going to be on this side of the page. So everything on this side is going to be darker because that's where the shadows are going to fall. So just have in mind where you want your light source. And then if you're using watercolor pencils, all you need to do is do an outline on the opposite side of your page to the light source, and then we're going to spread the color so it goes from dark to light. So now I've added a little bit of colour to my work, and as you can see, I haven't coloured in the whole thing because I want some really light colours and really light tones in there. So all I'm going to do is use my brush with a little bit of water, and I'm going to spread that watercolour through. So it doesn't take much water at all. I'm just going to take some of that colour and spread it to those lighter parts of the drawing. So now that I've finished colouring in this first part of the monster, you can see some tone and form have been created just from moving that watercolour that you put down across, not having to colour in your whole piece. Just being able to move that creates the lights and the darks in the image. So all I'm going to do now is use different colours on each section and go through the same process of moving those colours to create those forms and those different tones. now that I've finished colouring in all of my little creatures, this is the final result. It's a really fun activity that you can go about in many different ways. You can focus on certain cartooning styles, you can do different creatures. Every time you draw new lines, you're always going to come out with something that's a little bit different, but this is a really fun way to practice your drawing skills. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.